In the past decade, cinema audiences have seen decidedly little of Jim Carrey. With the recent release of 2022's Sonic the Hedgehog 2, fans are finally getting another dose of the beloved comic actor, who reprises his role from the original film as villain Dr. Eggman. Sadly, his treat for audiences comes with some bad news, as Jim is claiming that his role in the film may very well end up being his last ever. Join Trender as we take a look at the real reason Jim Carrey is retiring, as well as something that may bring him back. Will Sonic the Hedgehog 2 be Jim Carrey's last movie? While Jim Carrey fans have been anxiously awaiting the release of 2022's Sonic the Hedgehog 2, its premiere has sadly come with some bad news. The beloved comic actor, who can be seen in the sequel reprising his role of the villainous Dr. Eggman from the original film, claims that his work in Sonic the Hedgehog 2 may very well end up being his last bit of film work ever. Of course, Jim Carrey has threatened to leave Hollywood before, but this time the actor claims that he's serious, or at least fairly serious. Though Jim seems to be having a hard time making his mind up about whether he's serious about retiring from acting or only fairly serious, he claims that it's going to take some marvelous film script in order to get him back in front of the cameras. Sonic the Hedgehog and its recent sequel represent the only major films that Jim Carrey has appeared in within the last several years. And there's certainly no high works of art. If Jim is looking to end his career with a bang, there's a chance he might try to do one more critically acclaimed picture before officially retiring. However, Jim seems intent on teasing his fans that Sonic the Hedgehog 2 may really mark the end of his time in Hollywood. Jim Carrey didn't work much during the 2010s prior to the release of Sonic the Hedgehog in 2020. Jim Carrey hadn't headlined a major feature since the third Dumb and Dumber film in 2014. Though it was the third film in the series, it was the first follow-up to feature Jim Carrey and Jeff Daniels reprising their classic roles from the original film. Despite the pedigree, Dumb and Dumber 2 was a big disappointment with both critics and audiences, and this perhaps made Jim hesitant to take on further work. Even prior to the release of 2014's Dumb and Dumber 2, Jim Carrey had been slowly transitioning away from his days as a headlining blockbuster star. This isn't because Jim Carrey is no longer bankable, but instead because the beloved comic actor simply doesn't think very much of the Hollywood system. According to Jim, he's grown tired of the corporate influence over Hollywood and prefers expressing himself in ways that he has complete control of. Some of the ways that Jim prefers to express himself nowadays include painting and drawing political cartoons. He shares the latter hobby on his Twitter account to numerous followers. While Jim Carrey's film work in the 2010s was predominantly limited to the aforementioned Dumb and Dumber 2, he also headlined 20 episodes of a Showtime series by the name of Kidding that represented somewhat of an artist comeback for the actor. Jim's work on the series saw him reuniting with director Michael Gondry, who had directed the actor in the critically acclaimed 2004 feature Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. Just as the release of Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind over a decade prior had proved to critics and audiences that there was more to Jim Carrey than just his comedic person, the release of the Showtime series Kidding in 2018 proved to modern audiences that Jim Carrey is still just as talented as ever after all these years. Jim is getting passionate about politics. Besides Jim Carrey's work on the Showtime series Kidding, which ran for 2 seasons, Jim Carrey could also be seen performing on several notable episodes of the sketch comedy series Saturday Night Live throughout 2020. Jim Carrey played presidential nominee Joe Biden over the course of several episodes, with the occasion being the 2020 presidential election. If Jim Carrey's political cartoons are any indication, the comedic actor is fairly passionate about his politics. Jim is certainly glad that Donald Trump is out of office, though he seems to be more passionate about independent politicians than big ones like Joe Biden. Is Jim Carrey still a bankable star? Besides Jim Carrey, Sonic the Hedgehog 2 also features such stars as James Marsden and Idris Elba. The first film raked in well over $300 million at the box office, and about as much of that came from Jim Carrey's star power as the star power of the film's titular video game character. After all these years, Jim Carrey is certainly a bankable star, though it's doubtful that he could ever again command the staggering $20 million paycheck that he was purported to have received for 1996's The Cable Guy. Ironically, The Cable Guy went on to become the actor's biggest flop. However, the failure of the film didn't much affect the actor's career, and he went on to appear in his biggest blockbuster features over the course of the ensuing 1990s and 2000s. Jim Carrey is currently known as one of the most recognizable stars in the world, but there was a time when the actor was struggling to be noticed. In fact, Jim Carrey's success during the 1990s surprised a great deal of the comic actor's critics. And there were many who claimed that the actor's comedic antics would end up proving to be just another cinematic fad, like Pauly Shore and Yahoo Serious before him. Instead, Jim Carrey was somehow able to endear audiences despite critical disapproval, and was eventually able to win over the critics with more cerebral features, such as the aforementioned Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. If you're enjoying this video so far, be sure to hit the like button to show your support. Also, subscribe to the channel if you'd like to be among the first to know when more awesome Trender videos are on their way. Jim Carrey chooses not to work. Unlike so many other comedic stars that have saturated the media and then essentially disappeared, Jim Carrey works infrequently to his own volition. Studios would likely love it if the star would be willing to come back out and start acting in blockbuster features as routinely as he did during the late 90s and early 2000s, but Jim would prefer to toil away his days on his California ranch, working on paintings at his leisure and sketching political cartoons for his social media followers. Jim claims that he prefers painting to acting because there's no one around him to tell him what to do, and he says that he started getting into sketching political cartoons just around the time of the 2016 presidential election. Is Jim mentally well? Many were surprised when Jim Carrey first started taking to social media to share his political cartoons. Jim has candidly revealed that he was initially discouraged from going onto social media due to his oftentimes erratic behavior. However, he claims that he always has at least 2 or 3 handlers sign off on his social media posts before he makes them. According to him, this is just the way things are for a person of his stature. The beloved comedic actor's sanity has been questioned numerous times over the past few decades. In 2017, at a time when he hadn't been seen in a major film since the aforementioned release of Dumb and Dumber 2 in 2014, Jim made an appearance on Jimmy Kimmel Live that saw the actor behaving very strangely. Several months after his bizarre appearance on Jimmy Kimmel Live, Jim Carrey made a bizarre appearance at a party that was being held during New York Fashion Week. A reporter on the party's red carpet interviewed the actor, and Jim claimed that the reason that he had attended the party was because he wanted to do the most meaningless thing that he could possibly think of. He then went on to insinuate that he didn't exist and talk about spiritual energy. Following these strange public exhibitions, Jim Carrey had his aforementioned light comeback thanks to the Showtime series Kidding, and the light comeback was followed by a more major comeback with his appearance in 2020's Sonic the Hedgehog. Fans may have thought that they were going to be getting quite a bit more from Jim Carrey in the future, though the actor's insistence that he is fairly serious about retiring following the release of Sonic the Hedgehog 2 casts doubt on how much we'll be seeing of the beloved comic actor. Dolly Parton wants Jim to play Porter Wagoner. Although Jim Carrey maintains that he is fairly serious about making his reprisal of Dr. Eggman in Sonic the Hedgehog 2 his last film role ever, there is one person who seems to be anxious to keep the actor from retiring, and that unlikely figure is Dolly Parton. And the reason that she doesn't want Jim to retire is because she thinks that he would be perfect to play the part of country music singer Porter Wagoner in a proposed movie about her life. For those that don't know, Dolly Parton got her start in the industry thanks to her tenure on The Porter Wagoner Show. Though Dolly and Porter had their troubles after Dolly left the show, they made up by the time of Porter's death, and he still remains an integral part of the female singer's story. According to Jim, he'd be willing to set aside his plans for retirement if he thinks that there's a script that would be worth filming. However, it has yet to be seen whether or not Dolly Parton can produce a script that would meet the beloved comedic actor's standards. Until then, Jim Carrey's fans should be sure to catch Sonic the Hedgehog 2. Although Jim Carrey could likely still be a big, bankable Hollywood star if he wanted to, it seems that the beloved comedic actor prefers to stay at his California ranch and work on his paintings and political cartoons. Now it's time to hear from you. Did you know that Jim Carrey was the first actor to ever receive $20 million to appear in a motion picture? And that the actor is claiming that he's ready to retire after the release of Sonic the Hedgehog 2? As always, like this video to show your support, and subscribe, and hit the notification bell if you'd like to be among the first to know when more awesome Trender videos are on their way.